Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for attending tonight. Saltillo is excited to introduce our guest presenter, Sarah Fischer, and her presentation, Finding Your Voice, Implementing AAC in an Elementary Severe Needs Classroom. My name is Kara Hubers, and I will be your facilitator tonight. I'm going to go ahead and turn the presentation over to Sarah. So thank you, Sarah, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Kara, and thank you all for joining me today. I appreciate this opportunity and feel honored to be a part of the Saltillo community. I owe so much to this company, as you will soon see, for helping me give a voice to those who struggle with communication. It has truly been awe-inspiring to see the progress students have made because of the app you created, so thank you so much. Um, so today, we're going to talk about using AAC in a classroom, but I wanted to first introduce myself. My name is Sarah Fischer. I am the severe needs special education teacher at Silver Creek Elementary in Colorado. I've been the teacher for 3 years now. I had my first teaching experience in Poudre School District up in Fort Collins, where I received my undergrad. And I also served as a severe autism teacher during my student teaching experience up in Greeley, Colorado. So I have taught solely in Colorado, but I'm interested to hear from people attending the presentation from other states on how your classrooms look as well. So what you see today stems from my experience teaching in this room. I know I've only been in the classroom for 3 years, but I've gotten a lot of support and guidance from administrators and mentors and other specialists that I'm hoping to share with you today. So just really quickly, I do not have any disclosures. I'm just a special ed teacher, so I don't belong to ASHA, and I'm not getting paid to do this presentation. I simply wanted to share with you the remarkable ability that students can get from using touch chat and how to integrate that into subject areas across the school day. I also wanted just to take a moment to acknowledge Maureen Costello. She is the creator of Twin Powers Unite Literacy Intervention, and that's how I got my start in this for this intervention. She has a presentation on the Saltillo website called Twin Powers, and I would highly recommend going in and watching her presentation. I'll refer to it a few times this evening. And she also has all the data collection sheets up as her handouts. So again, things that I'm showing you in this presentation, you won't have to recreate. You'll just have access to it if you log into her presentation. And again, I just wanted to, thanks to Tillo, you've been so generous and so kind to me. And I really believe in what they're doing. And hopefully you guys will see today the power that touch chat can have. So today you will hopefully walk away from this presentation being able to describe the scope and sequence for implementing AAC devices using a literacy-based intervention. So I mostly cover literacy, reading, and writing, but I also will dabble into a little bit of how to integrate AAC in math for games and across settings and general education as well as in the home setting. You will also be able to discuss how to plan a lesson incorporating AAC using various high and low tech support. So as a teacher, when I attend these types of conferences and webinars and presentations, I want to be able to walk away with something that I can implement right away. And that's my goal for you guys today, is literally giving you a lesson plan so that you can implement something in your classroom, hopefully by the end of the week. Thirdly, we want to participants should be able to identify the benefits of using AAC for students with unique communication needs across academic domains and settings. So we're just going to talk about why it's so important, how you can use it. I know it's tricky to have access to the device at all times, but just strategies on making it possible. We're going to apply ideas from the presentation to support AAC device both in the classroom and home setting. So I understand that we have a variety of participants in the audience today. Maybe you're a teacher or a parent or a speech language therapist. My hope is that no matter what profession you're in, you'll be able to connect on some level with what I'm doing in my classroom and implement part of those strategies into how you work with your students. And finally, we'll talk about generalization extension activities so students can continue to learn across time. So I feel like in a lot of classrooms, it's easy to implement it in a one-on-one setting or maybe during when you're reading a book. but it's a little bit trickier to use it in every classroom and everywhere you go. So hopefully this presentation will give you some ideas on how to make that possible. So here's just a quick agenda. I'm going to start today by talking about pre and post intervention data. I hope to catch you right away with how important this intervention is and show you how successful students can be. So I wanted to start with that data. And then I'm going to talk about the students in my classroom and what we did to make the intervention successful for each one of those. I'll give you some suggestions on maybe how you can set up your classroom to support students without overstimulating them. We'll plan for a lesson. I'll do a step-by-step presentation on how to introduce the word of the week, and I'll get more into what that means, and then give you a lot of different videos for teaching in action of me modeling and students doing. I know I'm a visual learner, so hopefully these videos will help you as well. And then we'll cover a few different extension activities so that you can, again, use the ideas across time. So let's go ahead and talk about how this project even started. I started this intervention 3 years ago with one student, and you will see him a little later on this presentation. And from there, with the success that he experienced, I moved it to the entire classroom. So the Twin Powers Literacy Intervention Program focuses on teaching students using AAC devices how to read, write, and identify dynamic learning map core words. So this list of core words, and like I said, Maureen will go in a lot more detail in her presentation about this, but essentially DLM core words are words that can stand alone for students who use devices. So they're words like, want, stop, go. They're words that overlap frequently with high frequency word lists that we see at the kindergarten and first grade level, but they just have more meaning. If you're capable of learning maybe 100 words, you wouldn't want one of those words to be of or the. You would want it to be meaningful so that you can communicate that not just when you're reading, but when you want something in real life. So essentially, that's how we chose the words that we did. Students will then read these words either verbally or with their device. They'll find the targeted word in a field of 3, and they'll identify that word in a sentence. So we're measuring 3 different ways students can identify that word. The program teaches the students 1 word a week through various literacy activities, including reading level books with the targeted core word, pulling sentences with the word in it together, and writing the word using several mediums. So a lot of this I'll show you step by step on how to introduce the word, the activities we do to support learning, and we'll talk about why these words were selected as well. So here is pre-intervention data. So this was back in 2016, and you can see those words that I just mentioned. Up, look, me. These are words that they can use to stand alone. So before you even start the intervention, you want to collect data on what words you need to focus on. So this is a data collection sheet that's available on Maureen's presentation. And again, we're testing them in 3 ways. So expressively, can they say the word either on their device or with their voice? Receptively, can they find it in a field of 3 words? And in content, can they identify it in a sentence? So you can see at the beginning of 2016, the student knew 4 out of the 10 words expressively, half the words receptively, and only 3 in contents. So I used this data, I did it for my entire class, and from there I said, oh, well, the majority don't know look. Most of them know I, so maybe I don't need to use that word in this chunk of intervention time. So I use that data to guide my instruction. So after the 10 weeks, you can see that this student now mastered all 10 words receptively, all 10 words expressively, and 8 out of 10 words in context, which is huge. You can see below there bonus words. As he started learning these words quicker, I wanted to give him more opportunities and didn't want to focus just on 1 word a week. And so he, out of the bonus words, mastered 6 out of 10 receptively, 1 out of 10 expressively. We kind of went back that day, but that's great to collect data across time because maybe that was just a bad day. Maybe he does know more words, but we should probably retest to see. And in content, he grew a word. So growth, and that's amazing. it's not, what I want to really talk about though is that this intervention doesn't just work for one type of learner, it works for a variety of learners. And I'll get more into the demographics of my classroom, but you can see here, these 4 students all grew in all areas. The columns without graphs means that the student already knew the 10 words and retained those 10 words. So that's really important too, is that maybe a student got lucky and identified a word in the field of 3 or in that sentence. And so you can mark that. That doesn't necessarily mean they have it mastered. This data shows that across 10 weeks time, they knew it at the beginning, they retained it all 10 weeks, and they can say it at the end. So really powerful data. If nothing else, I hope that you can see that it is possible for all students to learn, even if it's just one word. And I wanted to just talk about using this intervention to drive a SMART goal. So teachers out there, you're already doing this work. I'm going to show you how you can collect data on a daily basis, super easy, super fast. So you might as well make a SMART goal out of it. So this goal states that when given 10 core words in various formats, the 3 that we mentioned, he will read the word verbally or with a device in 8 out of 10 opportunities across 3 data days with 3 or few verbal prompts by spring 2017. So you can see that it's measurable, it's doable because you're doing a maximum number of words. So you can see the objectives are broken down into how many words I expect him to read across that semester. So you don't want to double your workload. If you're already going to do this, you might as well make a SMART goal out of it. So I just wanted to take a minute to kind of show you the stars of the show. These are my kids. And I wanted to highlight them because they're all different learners. I have students in my classroom with autism spectrum disorder. I have kiddos with traumatic brain injuries, seizure disorders, speech language impairments, specific learning disorders, Down syndrome. But it doesn't matter. Those are just labels. It doesn't impact the way that it impacts the way that they learn, but it doesn't impact their ability to learn. So I wanted to just kind of talk to you about this, and that a lot of the times teachers see what I'm doing and they're like, oh, well, you got lucky, you know, you have a class that you can do this with. Well, I didn't get to pick these students. These students were given to me, and I have molded the intervention to meet their needs. So I wanted to talk to you about them because maybe you can relate to a student in your classroom, like, oh, well, he's very similar to this student, maybe I can try this type of intervention with him. So I just wanted to kind of, plus they're pretty cute kids, so I like to show them off a little bit. So I mentioned earlier of these students that 7 out of 10 of them use an AAC device in some way. So not all of them qualify for a device, but that's why I love this intervention, because you can also integrate low-tech supports through word cards and picture supports, so all students can still learn. And every student is able to participate in our group in some way. So I mentioned previously the student that I started this intervention with. This is him 3 years later, and I think it's pretty remarkable. So let me go ahead and play this video.
Truck is
no. Could not read. Let me hear you. Truck.
this. Truck is big.
Could read. Let me hear you.
So pretty incredible considering we started, first time I met this student, we were in a corner trying to blow bubbles just so that we can sit together. And now you can see with very minimal support from a para, he's able to find every word on his device from the book successfully. And I apologize for the way that the video is oriented, but hopefully you could see that he was touching each word as he found the word on his device, and that we still had that expectation that then he verbally read the words from the story. So pretty incredible what the student is able to do. But he didn't get that way just by putting the device in front of him. There are a lot of things that we have to do in order to prepare any of the students for this intervention. So I think a lot of the times teachers get so excited when they hear about a new intervention that they just jump right in and they're like, oh, but why didn't it work? I followed it completely to a T. And well, there's a lot of things that we thought about before we even started. So things to consider before beginning, preferential seating. You'll see in some of the videos that my kids access cube chairs, rocking chairs. Some students can't sit next to each other because they set each other off. So we're really specific in how we set up our environment. We also address all of those sensory needs before we begin. So we give them chewies, their headphones, weighted materials, preferred objects. That's one of my favorite things to do is give them a fidget because when it's their turn to participate, I all of a sudden have a very preferred object that they're willing to work for, and then I can give that right back. You want to give them access to the device and models, including low-tech support. So I'll show you pictures here in just a minute of what our word wall looks like, or what some pathways that you can develop look like, so that students have access to their device all the time. You want to give them appropriate wait time. So sometimes this means that a student is reading 5 words in a sentence and it takes 5 minutes, and you're giving jobs to all the rest of your students. So you're telling them to find the character in the book and where is the setting taking place and labeling your pictures, because you want to give every student the time that they need to read and access their device. You'll see me also adjust visual fields by limiting the number of icons a student has access to. And I'm very fortunate in that I have para support with me. Most of my students are either one-on-one or 1-to-2 during this intervention. So I'm lucky enough that I get to lead the intervention and I have the support to it. But I will show you how you can do it even if you don't have that number of supports. So here are a few different ways that you can set up your classroom. To the left here is probably the most important thing that you can do for your students for this intervention, and that's creating a low-tech word wall. So you can see that there's 42 icons on there, and they are all of those core words, those words that can stand alone to mean something. Most of them have picture supports and they come straight from TouchChat. So we were able to use Chat Editor, which is a free downloadable app that you can have access to print off pathways and pictures. And I'll show you a slide going into more detail about that. And so now students have access to these low-tech models at all times. So you can see we have Velcro at the top, and in the very beginning of our intervention 2 years ago, we only used this. We didn't use anything else. We just went around and read these words, and we created very basic I go, you need, he likes sentences that described something in our life. So if nothing else, please put one of these low-tech boards in your room. It doesn't have to be a full-scale one like this one. Even if students have access to a smaller, tangible word wall, it's so important. And then on the right here is another type of portable word wall we have. So we printed off the different categories available in TouchChat. And for those of you familiar with TouchChat, you know that's how it's organized. So we printed off food and emotions and colors and put them on a ring. And then we use this a lot in our shared writing, and I'll show you an example of that later on in the presentation. But you can also use this just for additional practice. You can throw it in a student's work basket, and they can go through and read the word, find it on their device, and just kind of flip through that. So also it being mobile, has allowed us to take it into their gen ed classrooms, and just by making it more portable, it's a little bit more user-friendly. I used to have all of these words posted on our walls, and as you can imagine, that was just very overstimulating. So I really like the change that we made here with the portable word wall. A couple other things that you can do. This bottom here, sentence frames, my students are to the point now where they don't need a picture support for all of their core words. They can read the word without the picture support. So I would highly recommend using Chat Editor to create these sentence frames when you're beginning the intervention. But right now, my students are okay using just these, and we refer to these a lot when we're doing our journal writing. And at the top here, these are just like icons that we got from, again, their device, and we use it a lot in the early stages of the intervention. So maybe somebody across the room was having a difficult time using their device, and instead of me stopping the intervention and addressing that student, I would just hold up a wait or a quiet or a stop sign, and it was enough to get them to at least a 10 per second so that we can continue the intervention. So very powerful, just another tool that you can use to help make the intervention go a little bit smoother in your classroom. So far we've talked about data, we've talked about how that should drive your instruction. We've talked about some different components on what you can do to support students in your room. And now I wanted to talk about the reading component. So you're gonna select that word, the core word, based off student data. You're gonna post that word everywhere around the room. And again, Maureen has a lot of different examples on how to do this, but essentially you can put it up on your word wall. If you have a daily focus board, you can put it on the wall, you can put it on your badge, on the back of your badge, and just keep showing that word over and over. You're just going to want to post it as many places as you can. And then you're going to want to select a word, a book, that has that word in a repeated way. So we started out using sight word readers, and they were maybe 3 to 4 sentences, 3 to 4 word sentences that were very basic and had that word repeated. And then since then, we've moved on beyond those core words, and we're using resources such as Hubbard's Cupboard, Reading A to Z, and The Measured Mom. Those are all great resources to get leveled books as well as picture supports for your writing component. And of course, I utilize Pinterest. There's a bunch of different ideas that you can get there as far as books go and different tower ideas. And when in doubt, you can always write your own book. As my students got to be more familiar with the core words, I found it more challenging to find those repeated sentences with more challenging words like different. So I ended up just writing my own book, and that could be really meaningful and powerful to your students because you can customize it to what they need. Once you have your word in your book selected, you're going to want to familiarize yourself with the past. And I know that this sounds very basic, but you're going to save yourself a lot of time up there when you're modeling if you already know the device and if you already know where it is. Like some of my students are to the point where they can find the words faster than I can, which is great, but you definitely want to know those paths. And then you're going to want to prepare any of the extension activities that we'll go over. So in my district, we also can use leveled literacy intervention, or LLI, and those are just books. Hopefully your district has something similar, but you can also, like I said, use Reading A to Z or Hubbard's Cupboard. And then you're going to need picture supports. So when we do the shared writing component, you need pictures that match with the sentences in your book. So you can use Chat Editor to create these pictures, which is essentially the exact same icons on your student's AAC device that you can print out, or you can just copy the pictures from the book and use it for your sentences. So now you can really start the intervention. You have your word you're going to focus on, and you have the materials you need to teach it. So essentially what you're going to do is start off by showing the selected word in touch chat format. So you're going to take the word off your DLM cord word wall, and then you're going to go around to each student. And I make this mistake all the time as a teacher. The first time a student sees a word, I'm like, what is this? And then I'm surprised when they just look back at me. Well, they don't know it yet. So Monday and Tuesday and maybe even Wednesday, you're giving them that word. You're going around and you're saying, this word says stop. Stop starts with us, and you're breaking it down. You're showing them the picture of the stop sign that it goes with. You're just modeling and telling them over and over again where this word is. And then you're going to model for them how to find it on their device. Most of these words are on their home page, so that makes it really easy, but sometimes it could be on a describing page or maybe under your extra words that you need to go and access. And then you're going to model it over and over and over. You're going to use it in sentences. You're going to use it in different contexts. You're going to use it as many times as possible so that by the end of that lesson, that student is so sick of you hearing that word, but it's ingrained in their brain. And then you're going to read the same book at least 2 times during the week. So even in the 3rd year of this intervention, I really stick to no more than 2 books a week. Since we're in more complex books, I really only do 1, but I would not exceed 2 books a week. And the lesson plan example will break that down for you. Once a lesson is finished, you want to go back and have the student reread the word. So this time, after the 30 minutes that you've had, you've talked about it, you've modeled it, you should be able to have them say the word back to you, and that you at least, or maybe you are giving them a few physical prompts to find it on their device. And then the exit ticket, this is what I was talking about earlier with your daily data collection. Their exit ticket is reading all the words that you've done in your intervention so far. So if it's week 3 and you focused on words I, like, and go, those are the 3 words that you're going to test each student on really quick. You're just going to do it in flashcard format, and they're going to either find it on their device or read it verbally. And you can track that. So every day you're getting data on, are they retaining those words? And if you're finding that, ooh, a lot of my students forgot the word go, then you can go back and that next week you focus on that word again. We've definitely had to go back and focus on words several times. Sometimes it takes longer than a week to do, and that's perfectly okay. So this is a picture of Chat Editor, and like I said, it's essentially the screen that students have access to, but you can print from it so that you can go to capture mode and create pathways or just individual picture cards that students can use. So I'm very fortunate in that I have a smartboard that I project Chat Editor on, but if you don't have a smartboard, there are other ways to access it. You can put a student's device underneath the projector and model the pathway that way. And if you don't have an extra device or access to a projector, you can always use Chat Editor to make the pathways, print out the pathways, and then both parents, teachers, students have access to direct instructions on how to find a certain word and how to create a sentence using picture cues. Again, Maureen goes into way more depth about this. My students, like I said, use the smartboard to access it, so we don't really rely on paths anymore. So it's not something I'm going to highlight in this presentation. But like I said earlier, I'm a visual learner, so here is a video of me modeling how to use Chat Editor.
Look at my words. I look at different animals. My turn first. Lily, I should be up here. Thank you. I look. It's probably on that first page, but if I don't know, I can go to, oh, what sound says, oh, good. I'm going to go to L. I'm going to find look at, and our word difference under describe, different, go to groups, just to find animals. It might be under pets, animal. Add your S because we're looking at more than just one animal. I look at different animals.
So I went pretty fast during that model. So this was probably like a Thursday or maybe even a Friday. But you can see essentially the format. I model what it's like, and then students are expected to do it. I'm using the textbook, I'm referring to the words in the textbook, and then I'm finding it on their device. Sometimes we'll model the same sentence 2 or 3 times before I let students go and use their own device. But you can also hear in the background para support and them trying to also help the students create that sentence on their own device. So the routine essentially is that you first introduce the word and briefly talk about the book. You're going to read the title, and students either write the title on their device or the whiteboard, or they copy it from the book. So right from the beginning, you are having students identify a title of the story. You're going to talk about the author. You're going to identify what it's going to be about, make inferences on what the book will be about based on the title. You're going to have a lot of literacy, early reading skills just by the first prompt of writing the title. Then you're going to model it. It's very much of watch me first, than you do. After I model, I go around and I also support students and help them find words on their devices. Some students prefer to be independent when they're doing that. They don't like when you touch their device, and I can respect that. It's their voice. And so they don't have a pair on them. I'm just going by and helping them as we go. And then it's always important for students to read the text aloud after they found it on their device. So you modeled it, you've read it, they found the words, they've heard their device say it. Now it's their turn to say it with their own voice, if possible. And then maybe do a comprehension check, asking those WH questions that so many of us have goals around. Who is doing this? Where are they? And then you're going to move on to the next page and repeat over and over again. So here is an example of a student using Chat Editor on the smartboard.
Where? Good job finding R. Now R. Good. Sweet. R. Do you see the word we? You are so right here. Move your body so you can find we. We. Period. Did you find it? Nice. Do you want to write more? Where are we? Where are we? Nice job. Do you want to write the here and a fourth? Did you erase it? You're finished. All right.
I apologize. I thought that we had fixed all of the rotating videos. I have no idea why it does that and why it doesn't save every time, so I apologize for that. But hopefully you got the gist of it. A few things that I wanted to point out from this video was giving him that wait time. His shadow was a little bit more interesting than finding the words, and that's okay, but giving him time. You saw me also narrow the field after a few prompts of just circling the 4 icons around the word instead of having him look at all 42 icons. Made it a little bit more manageable for him. And something that I thought was really cool at the end was that he actually said finished. I asked, do you want to write more or are you finished? And we went over the word finished the previous week, so he went back and selected that word finish. It was pretty powerful in that he answered my question and told me, no, I'd rather go back and sit down right now. So some pretty powerful stuff. And again, students can model it in different ways, a projector, or you can have that written down on your pathways using Chat Editor. And like I said before, I then go around and I have all the students independently do that sentence on their device. So here's a student doing that.
R. Okay, now. Say it. I. All right. Let's write it. Start with where. We.
And where are we?
Good.
We.
R.
Are.
And. Make your question mark. We're asking a question.
Okay, ready?
We're asking a question.
Ready?
So we're going to put our question mark.
Are.
We're going to put our question mark. Nice job. Now come down here.
Good job.
Yep. Good reading, Carson.
So for those of you who can see upside down, you can notice that he's using the device again. I don't move my finger until he's found that word on his device. That's a strategy that you can use for those kind of stubborn students. And then you can see all the different things we did to set him up. He's in a cube chair. He's wearing a weighted vest. You can see his fidgets there on the counter. All things that we needed to do just to prepare him so that he can write these words on his device. And then after he wrote all those, we went back and reread that text. So that is essentially the reading component. And after that, every day we also do a writing component. So we integrate multiple subject areas, which is so important because students need to practice all subject areas, not just reading. So this is called shared writing. And what you essentially do is prepare those sentences before, and then this is when you use those picture cues so that students can go back and finish those sentences. So you can see a very simple repeated phrase, you go on the, and then the student picks an option so they have some independence in their writing, and then they write their name next to it so that they take ownership of that sentence. So while every student is while one student is up there creating their sentence, all the other students are writing that sentence on their device. So here is an example of me modeling the shared writing component.
From our calendar, we're going to see different shapes. So I'm going to go ahead and go first. And I get to pick any shape I want. Some of them are a little trickier, but I'm going to go with triangle. The triangle is different. Don't forget to put your name up there. You got to write it kind of small today. Maybe we write it under. All right, I need all of you guys to write those 4 words. The triangle is different. Ella, you can get a whiteboard, and instead of writing the word, why don't you draw the shape? The triangle, you would draw a triangle.
So again, pretty basic, just a lot of modeling, step by step. You're going to have the students come up and pick the picture, fill it in the sentence, and then reread the sentence. The intervention is all about scaffolding and modeling, so you can see that for some students, writing all those words is a little challenging. So yeah, drawing pictures is great, and then it also lets you know if they know their shapes or not. So one strategy you can use to modify. I just think it's a lot cuter when students model for you. So here's an example of a student doing shared writing.
You know what that shape is? It's kind of a triangle, but it's 3D. Pyramid. Oh, good one. Everyone, see out a pyramid. Here we go. Nice job. Now you are going to write the pyramid is different. You might.
So I'm going to go ahead and pause it there because you can see Connor is up at the board there. He's writing his sentence. He's going to write his name there. All the other students are going around and writing what he wrote. So then what you're going to do is take those sentences and integrate it into journal writing. So once they're all written, you're going to type them up and prepare them for their journals. So writing will look different for each student. There's so many different ways that you can write. You can use letter stamps. You can use pictures. You can use adaptive writing programs like PixWriter or BoardMaker. A lot of our students aren't pencil and paper writers, and that's okay. They can still have a writing journal they can share. You're going to cut apart the words and mix them up in a field of 2 to 5 words. So again, testing them on can they identify this word receptively. You're going to help students put the words back together. And then some students might copy that sentence in their writing, some might not. And then students draw a picture to represent what's shown in that sentence, which is really important because that's what a lot of our students are expected to do in the general education classroom when they're doing their writing. So something that they practice in special ed that they can generalize to their classroom. So here's a few examples of what journal writing looks like. You can see on the very left, the student was able to cut them all out, put the words together, and then write that word. The student in the middle attempted to draw a picture that supported her sentence. And you can see the one on the end, the student was still accessing letter stamps to create his sentences. So making journal writing as personable as possible. And then there's another activity that we like to do, an extension writing activity called Smartboard Sentences, and essentially you model it first. Students put the words in the correct order and reread what they wrote. Again, students are using that sentence on their device while the other one's at the board, and this is a great time to talk about sentence structure such as capitalization, punctuation, finger spacing, fluency. You can do this low-tech very easily using sentence strips, cutting those words apart and having students put them back together. You can use your cord word wall for this as well with the Velcro strip. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. You don't have to do it on the Smartboard. And I'm looking here at my clock, and I'm going to go ahead and just show this video here of the student modeling, and I can show you what we did here to prepare the student for success.
3, 4, 5. Do you want your lines?
Yeah.
Okay. Come on up. Ollie, nice reading. All right. So what word are you going to start with? All right. I don't. Okay.
So you can see there, I wish the video kept going, because we went back and we reread and we decided, that doesn't sound good to my ears. And we gave him the option of I don't to want skip or I don't want to skip, and he was able to correct his mistake on his own. So that was pretty cool. You can see here that I just have magic lines so the words match, so the lines match the number of words in their sentence. And then we go back and we talk about how we have a capital at the beginning, finger spacing, words at the end. You can do this low tech very easily just by doing different sentence strips on or words on note cards. A few other things you can do as for an extension activities, again, these are all games on the smartboard, but you can do them very easily on your own. You can match character to action from parts of your story. You can listen to true or ask yes, no, true, false questions about facts from your story. You can do fill in the blanks, which would look a lot like a repeated text. And you can also do, if your students aren't to matching word to word, you can obviously match word to picture as well. So just different ideas that you can think about when you're planning extension writing activities. So here's what a planner example would look like. So on Monday, you would get your text, where, and then you would do your dice writing. Dice writing is the sensory writing component. It is part of your handout. Essentially what you do is you just put one of those squares on a dice and a student will roll it, and whatever it lands on is the sensory writing experience you'll have. So chalkboard, shaving cream, cotton balls, rainbow writing, there's a lot of different options there, and that way you can really help connect to those students who don't always write using a pencil and paper. On Tuesday, you're going to read or reread that same book and then do something similar to the smartboard sentences. On Wednesday, we do something different. We read pen pal letters, and I'll get a little bit more into that. Just we do something a little bit different that day. And then Thursday, you might get a new text that day and do your shared writing chart. And then on Friday, finishing that text and doing your writing journal. So I know it's a lot of information, but essentially when you break it down, it's one book and then one writing activity right after. So hopefully this kind of lays it out to you and doesn't seem as overwhelming. You might just need to prepare one book for the week. Your dice will be ready. You do your shared writing as you go, and then all you have to do is type up those easy sentences. And so it's pretty manageable. At the beginning, it took me maybe a half an hour to prepare each week, and now it's less than 10 minutes. So definitely doable for all you busy teachers out there. So Kara, I'm not going to stop for questions right now just because we only have 15 minutes left, and I want to save time at the end for questions. So I do have this slide here. As we go along, please jot down any questions you might have, and like we said, if we don't get to them, you can feel free to contact me through my email, and we will definitely get those questions answered for you. So here is an example of what the sensory writing looks like. You can see we do letter stamps and shaving cream. We just kind of make it fun for them. Give them a break from using their device for a minute, since we've done so much of it with the half-hour intervention, and just access different modes, but we're still working on that core word. I mentioned that we do pen pal letters, so I collaborate with another speech language therapist at a different school, and every week we get a letter and we send a letter, and it's pretty cool. It's like Christmas every Wednesday for them to open up their letter, and we read it together, and then we send a letter off, and this is just a way that we can practice our topic in a different format. So we're going over right now in my classroom action words. So we've been sorting action words based on our 5 senses, and that's been really fun, and we've sent off a lot of different letters to our pen pals about that. And then my school is fortunate enough that on Fridays, the last Friday of the month, we get a coffee cart. And so my students go around and they greet the teachers and help pass out the goodies on that coffee cart. So that top right, the top picture there are those pathways that I've been talking about. So you can see I just went on the chat editor, I printed off the words that I wanted, and then students can refer to that path when they're interacting with other teachers. We have a few games with devices. I do want to show you these just because they're really cool and they might give you some ideas on how to play with your student at home and use their device whenever it's possible. So here's a few videos.
Would you like that? Okay. So you're going to go action. And go back home. You're going to do
All right, Keely, got to make it go.
good. Put.
Make it go, Keely.
Put.
Because Eric is going to put it there.
It. Yeah, that's it. Go ahead.
Yep, I'm filming you. You're doing great.
And then you're gonna go to extra words.
Yep, keep going. I'll show you.
And find there.
Oh, she
Good.
started it. Eric, let's go put the ball there. Nice job making it go, Keely. Put it there. Yep, put it there. Nice job. Oh, Keely has to make it go.
So just a cute little game. We have one student who accesses a switch and she was making the game go, and then another student who had to request something before he could participate in the game. So I apologize that that video didn't show up as we practiced. But that's technology for you, and we just go with the punches here. So that's one kind of game that you can play, a cause and effect game. Here is another one with multiple players.
Okay, go.
What you have? What you have?
Okay.
My turn.
Okay, put the block in then. Just one, right? Now tell Ollie. Your turn.
Your turn.
Tell him. Your turn. All right, Ollie. You say my turn. My. Not I. My. Oops.
Ooh.
My
Ooh.
turn.
Turn.
Good job, Ollie.
Uh-oh. I got it.
Here you go. Ollie, what word did you get?
Wet. It's
Good. You can tell Chase. Your turn.
good.
Your turn. Okay, Chase, you need to say my turn.
So you can see we just kind of went around the table and we did a your turn, my turn format. I don't know if you noticed, but on the red side of those connect four dots, I just wrote those core words. So as they used the red tokens, they had to read the word. Something that I wanted to mention was that Connor said your turn verbally, and then I also made him say it with the device. And I just recently went to a conference that said it would be really obnoxious to do that to yourself, to say it in one way and then have somebody ask you again to do it the exact same way. So make sure that you honor if a student says something verbally, to not make them go back and find it on their device. Honor the fact that they use their words, even if it's a great opportunity to use their device as well. So and there's different ways that they found the word turn. Some students went to their actions page and others just stayed on their home page. So definitely honoring that too. And one last game, I believe this is the last video of the presentation, so hopefully it doesn't rotate or look weird, but here's one more game that you can play using AAC devices.
Okay, boys, I'm going to turn it off. Chase, what do you need to say?
I want
To play.
Nice.
Wait.
Okay, Ollie. What do you need to say?
I
Want
more.
I want
Thank you.
more.
Please.
Nice job. Yes, Chase, you can turn it on. Ollie said.
So you can see that both boys requested in a different way, but there were 3 to 4 word requests. That's pretty impressive. And they asked them in different ways. So you can see once you teach a student a path and play it over and over and over, then maybe they can say, I want more please when you offer them food, or I want to play when a peer comes up and interacts with them in a game. They can generalize those phrases across time and space. And speaking of generalization, you can also integrate task work task boxes into your classroom to help generalize. So essentially, a structured work system is a systematic means of presenting information in a way that is received and understood by the individual. So most students who access this do have autism, so it's very structured and organized. It's a left to right, top to bottom, but you can fill each one of those drawers with something related to your intervention, focusing on the core words, and they match the button from their desk to the tower. They complete the activity at their desk, and then you can see the all done button there on the right when they're finished with the activity. So a few different ways that you can do this, a few different example activities include on the far left there is just popsicle sticks with core words and letter beads. So they string the bead to form the letter, to form the word. You have magnet letters. You can have a dice with the words on it that you can roll. You can have clips that they match. So there's fine motor components to this as well with the beads and the clips. You can also integrate sensory experiences into this. So at the top there, we have literally just a bag of rice and a piece of paper with the words on it, and it's kind of like an I Spy game. So they push the rice, and when they find the word, they read that word to you. You can also just put paint in a bag, and even with their finger or a Q-tip, using flashcards, write the word in the bag. The one there is two eggs, and they find the word and they match the top and the bottom of the egg together. So these are just a few different examples. You can see here you use wiki sticks, you can use adaptive books. You have access to these slides in your handout. So if you have any questions or you want more example tower activities, please don't hesitate to ask. I have a ton of them, and I can go step by step to show you how we did that, how we created task boxes for the entire year that integrate what we do in our intervention program. So it's also important to use their device not just when reading, but to access all parts of their device. So during calendar time, we talk about how we're feeling, and we generate the sentence, I feel, and then they go up and write their name. We access a lot of the time element when we talk about the days of the week and the months. And then during our calendar is when we had a lot of that number sense, identifying numbers, counting down to a certain day. You can also see there that we have icons that we do patterning for. So we hit a lot of different components, and students have now mastered using their device during calendar, and it's pretty exciting to see them write 3 sentences about what yesterday was, today was, and what tomorrow will be, being able to identify what the month is when somebody asks. We also talk about the number of days in school we've been in, both in using base 10 blocks and place value, as well as money. We listen to songs, and we do a lot with movement during these just to keep students engaged. And then of course we talk about the weather and what we wear and what we can do outside, and also the season. So these are just, again, different components that you can address using your student's device, so that they're using it not just when reading or writing, but also to do math, to identify numbers, to tell you what day it is, a lot of different tasks. So it's great to talk about the intervention, but where are we now? Like, what does it look like year to year? So you can see that we went from using a screen with 42 icons to one with 60 now. Students increase their vocabulary because they all mastered those words. 80% of them have mastered 40 basic core words, which is pretty incredible that they can read those words across content areas. And we've now gone more from core words to sentence structure, so identifying the noun and a verb in a sentence and talking about WH questions more often. So definitely you can extend beyond you focusing on one word a week and continue to use the steps of the intervention to better meet your students' needs as they grow and as they learn. So there's so many different positives to talk about, but mostly, it's a great tool for all communicators. All students can participate. You can show data. You can use it for SMART goal writing. You can address a variety of needs using high and low tech. And there's so many different extension activities you can do to fill your schedule, to fill your day in a meaningful way. So I know I kind of rushed through that last part of the presentation. So like I said, if you have any questions about some of those activities, I'd be more than happy to walk you through that. And Kara, we have like 4 minutes. Are there any questions that I can answer at this time?
We don't have anything yet, but if you have any questions, feel free to chat them in, and Sarah will be able to answer them here in the next few minutes for you.
And if you don't have a question at this time, you can always reach out to me. That's my email address there. I'd love to know what resources you still need from me. I know that this was a look into just one classroom, but I'd love to see what other classroom looks like and what I can do to maybe help, and we can become a community together and we can help each other. Like I said, I know that there was a lot of information today, but if there's just one thing that you can commit to implementing in your classroom, that will make it so much more doable, whether it's just writing down what a lesson plan might look like or research where you can start getting books. I think that if we just take small steps, we can definitely implement the entirety of the intervention.
Sarah, we do have a question that just came in, and it is, how do you collaborate with your students' SLP?
So my students, SLP sees students one-on-one at least one time a week, and then she also does a whole group with all the pair supports. So we work really closely together on number one, creating their goals that we're going to work on for communication, and then she works on it in various settings, both in whole group and on one-on-one.
Okay, another question. Would you ask them to press on the white bar to have the message repeated, or would you accept the message without having it replayed entirely?
It's a great question, and I think it's kind of what the student prefers. If you have, if the student puts some sort of punctuation, it will automatically read out to you what that sentence says. But you can also tap it again to read it. It just depends on what the kid wants. I would honor whatever type of communication that student is using. Like I said, you don't want them to have to do work twice. And you can also program your touch chat so that the picture icons are on that white bar too. So you saw all of my students only have words up there, but you can make it so that pictures show up on there as well.
Okay, and another question, how many students in your class do not use AAC?
So there are 3 students who do not use an actual communication device. We have a student who uses a different type of device still related to Chat Fusion. It's just a scanning device though. So 7 out of 11 do. So those that don't still have access to it through the smartboard and that low-tech picture supports.
Okay, when you have students on different page sets, a 42 or a 60, how do you choose which symbols to choose for the sentence strips?
All the symbols will be the same from 42 to 60. It's just that 60 has more words available. So what they essentially did was on that core page, they pulled words from the extra words or the describe page and just put it so that students have 60 icons available to them instead of 42. But the icons are the same per page, and which is great because the device can grow with the student. You can go all the way up to, I think it's 120. But on just that one page, but the icons stay the same throughout.
What curriculum do you use for academics?
So this is kind of the reading curriculum that we use. It's guided by research, and Maureen can go more into depth about the why we selected the words that we did. But essentially this is, and DLM, the dynamic learning maps words will be presented again when you're doing your testing. So for all you teachers out there starting DLM testing right now, there is correlation between the words in this intervention and the words on that assessment. But to be honest, there really isn't. And I know that that's not the best answer, but we do what we need to do for the students in our classroom.
How do you manage modeling different vocabulary files on the smartboard?
So everything is organized for you so that the device itself is in categories. So you don't have to file anything really. Everything is already basically there for you. So when you go into your groups icon, there are everything that you need there, animals and food and drinks and clothes. So you don't have to organize anything. The program has already done it for you, but you can program to add more. And again, that's kind of a different presentation, but very, very easy to do.
Would you be able to share some of your tower activities and other amazing resources on Google Drive? The staff I support would love a bunch of these activities for carryover.
Absolutely. If the person who asked that question, if you just want to reach out to me and give me your email, and whoever else wants to participate as well, I can definitely take more pictures and give a little blurb about how to set up some of those tax box activities for you.
Okay, it's 8 o'clock, so I'm just going to ask one more question. Can you define the pathway?
So essentially the pathway is what the students, when you press it on their device, and what comes up on the white bar at the top, that's what a pathway is, but you can print it out. So when you use chat editor and you write the sentence, the car can go, all 4 of those words and anything that you had to touch to get to those words will show up and essentially create a map on how to write that sentence. So the is on your core word page, but you would have to go to groups and vehicles to find car. So all of those icons would come up on that pathway. So it's laid out essentially exactly which icon you have to take to create that sentence. I hope that's clear. And if not, go ahead and email me and I can explain it further.
One more question. Do you have students that are only able to utilize a single page on an AAC device due to categorical skill deficits?
I've found that students in my classroom with modeling and using the device over and over again in a variety of settings start to understand that categorization, and we talk about it a lot in our groups. So when we're talking about something that we wear, we're going to talk about, well, where would we find that? And we go to closed. So most of my students do not have problems accessing different pages on their device. Like I said, this is 42. You can go all the way down to a 4. I mean, you can go very, very basic with what you're doing for those learners who need a little bit more scaffolding. But what I've found is that students adapt very quickly and very easily to adding more icons as long as you're modeling and using that language over and over.
All right. Well, that's all the time that we have tonight. Thank you so much, Sarah, for presenting for us. We really, really appreciate it. So thank you again for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. And thanks, Sarah.
Anytime. Thank you so much. Feel free to reach out if you need anything else.